So, hello and welcome to Beyond the Feed with Media Bodies. So, this is where we're bringing you an inside look into influencer marketing and the creator economy. So, I'm Rosie, and today, what we're hoping to dive into a little bit is the look into IPs in general. So, across industries, we're looking at how we as an agency work with IPs for brands on campaigns. We appreciate that sometimes it can be a little bit daunting to launch influencer marketing campaigns when you're promoting products that are associated with IPs. So we really want to unpack what the differences are in these campaigns and how we can approach them in a way that makes you feel confident in the results and the campaign process itself. Today, we've got Anais with us from Media Bodies to help us kind of break into this topic a little bit more. So, I mean, you've managed some of our biggest gaming IP campaigns like with Marvel Snap and Warhammer. So I think it'll be great to have you here to unpack how these campaigns are a little bit different in terms of the process and results from our side.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Thanks for having me. Thanks for bringing me on. I've been with Media Bodies for almost a year now. And in that time, I've really got the opportunity to work with some really cool brands, just like Marvel Snap and Warhammer. So yeah, happy to be here.
Amazing. So, I mean, we'll dive straight into it then and start with a bit of quick context about why these campaigns with IPs are so unique. So tell me a bit about what is the fundamental thing that makes these campaigns different?
I think one of the main things here to take into account is timelines and third party ownership. There's lots of stake and shareholders involved in these approval processes, which really have an impact on timelines. Another major thing is that these IPs often come with lore and massive fandoms. And whilst that's super exciting and creates new opportunities, it's also a bit challenging to make sure you hit all the right things in a campaign.
Absolutely. So, I mean, what we're essentially saying is that working with IPs is both easier and more difficult at the same time and just makes it just a totally different approach than you would perhaps normally see when we're looking at influencer marketing specifically. So, I mean, let's get into how these different considerations make the process and approach slightly different than other campaigns. So, what's the first thing you think of when you receive a new brief for an IP campaign? What are the first things that come to mind for you?
Well, the first thing I'm going to personally look at is timelines. We want to make sure that we have enough time since everything takes a bit longer. This goes from approval processes of creators all the way to final drafts, where usually these things only have to go through one external party other than the agency. These ones for IPs often have to go through three different parties. So having that brief in time, getting that assignment in on time, and then really jumping into action is a main point here. For brief specifically, often IP holders have a really detailed brief. If not, like it's something to work on with them together, just to make sure that you have all the must-haves and the must-don'ts in there from the get-go. This is going to be really important with making sure that everything passes approval and that you get the right talent for this campaign.
And out of interest, then, we talk about the timeline. I mean, one of the big things that extends that timeline is, you say, the drafts. So you have drafts back from the creators, then they've got to go through rounds and rounds of approval with really strict briefs. What do you do when you're working on those campaigns to try and make that process from our side as streamlined as possible?
I definitely make sure that we have a very clear process that we've communicated with our client directly, with our point of contact. I also tend to tell them how long stuff will take with estimates, and we'll have really hard deadlines for creators to follow, just to make sure that once it gets to the point where we have something to review, that happens on time and with enough time for changes to be made to this. I think that's one of the most important things, is that communication that we will have with the client. And the better that is, the better they can communicate to their publisher, to their IP holder, just to make sure that everyone is aware of when exactly what needs to happen.
Absolutely, yeah. And like you say, with that brand safety, it's really important they get the time to approve things properly on their side so that the campaign can go ahead. But I imagine with these kind of campaigns, the very final deadline being the campaign window, is super, super strict. I mean, a lot of time we see campaigns are quite flexible with a lot of brands and they're happy to move things and shift them if things take a bit longer or even are completed a bit faster. But in this case, just they really have to stick to that tight window, right?
Yeah, exactly. There have been cases in the campaigns that I've run where the game publisher has a really good relationship with their IP holder. That's always lovely to see. And there is like that, like fluid communication between us, them, and then between the two of them. So sometimes you can push for a little bit more flexibility. But when I compare it to the other campaigns that I've run for not really IP based games, there is a vast difference when it comes to those, especially internal deadlines.
Yeah, absolutely. If we're looking on a more granular level, so we're looking at the specific creators, obviously that plays a big part in the timeline as well to make sure we're picking the right creators who can deliver the proper content in accordance with the brief, as well as everything else being, aligned with the fandom and the audience and the content style. How do we go about picking the right creators for this kind of campaign? I suppose it's the magic question, really.
Yeah, it's a really exciting one as well. It's always great when you find that perfect overlap of a creator with the passion for the IP and the right audience and reach. It's really a thorough vetting process. Like we want to make sure that the talent we present to the client and the shareholders and stakeholders is relevant. We don't want to waste anyone's time with anyone that wouldn't be suitable. So it's a thorough process to make sure that all the content that goes on these platforms often has to be family friendly, which is already like a big thing, especially when we are working with movie based IPs or stuff like that. It's great when content gets mentioned on the channel, but we also want to make sure in what context that gets mentioned, but also in a way that it still feels authentic and that we don't go and try and control the narrative. So it's a very fine line in finding these creators that have a specific angle on IPs and can provide the creativity and the audience to go with it.
And is it imperative that these creators have an existing relationship with the IP? Is it important that they're already fans of the game, they've seen the movie, or is it a blend of perhaps a more normal influencer marketing campaign where they can be introduced to the product and learn about it as they kind of promote it? Or is it purely we're looking at people with that existing interest?
So that really depends on campaign to campaign and client to client. I think the ones that I've worked with recently, they kind of know what audience they're trying to hit. It's always handy to have these creators that are familiar with the world because it makes the message feel more authentic. They understand the world, the lore that it's set in, and we notice that revisions are like way less than they would be with an influencer that still needs to get introduced. We also see that the briefs are often better followed. So I think if you're going for convenience as a brand, it's easier to work with influencers who are in that niche that know of you, of your brand, of your lore. But then again, if you're trying to reach out to those new markets or you're trying to hit new demographics, it can be interesting to have a kind of a two-part campaign where you have one part of your campaign targeted towards those that already know you.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it, kind of explore new verticals, see where unexpected audience may lie.
Yeah, and I suppose, like you say, it's hugely campaign dependent and client dependent based on their goals and what they want. And all of these things are going to be really, really clearly laid out before the planning process even begins. So it's something that you're going to be super, super clear about and have complete clarity on before you even start that process of finding creators to take part in the campaign. On that note, then, in how we prepare for campaigns like this, so less about the actual process and more about the preparation. The timeline is the buzzword of this talk about IPs because that's the thing that's going to fluctuate and change, and so many things have impact on that. How do we play our part as an agency in the collaboration, the wider collaboration between multiple stakeholders, publishers, license holders, creators, without losing the agility to stick to the timeline, but be flexible in the process?
Yeah, I think it all starts, like you say, with the planning of it. When we get these briefs and we get these clients through, it's really important to provide them a realistic timeline. It's all good to make promises, but you have to be able to follow up with them. And I think it's really important for brands as well when approaching agencies like ours to have that realistic view. Often when they come to us, they kind of know already what they want and they know they need some help finding it. So it's really important to to come at the right time, and then also like internally have the people available to make the timeline easier. Have those like sometimes late hour approvals need to happen. So having the right people available for campaigns like this on all sides, on the IP owner side, we need people to be available to approve. On the publisher side, we need people available to like pass stuff on. And so I think that's like a major thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key thing. I think understanding how we as an agency contribute to that process, but how actually we've got to have the planning for the client and their side of it as well in terms of how they communicate. It's all got to work together as a big kind of well-oiled machine in order for that end result to be achieved. So it's a bit of a combined effort from everyone, I suppose. And in terms of those other points of contact, well, not necessarily our points of contact, but people who are involved in those campaigns, how do you balance the kind of strict brand control and the opinions of so many different parties with the creative freedom that, we typically require to make sure that influencer integrations are authentic and original as well?
Yeah. So one thing that I really do whenever I get a brief through from a client that's IP based is that I look at the verticals that they're trying to target with this campaign. And then I like to come up with some creative ideas per vertical. Let's say you're a shooter creator. How can we target the call to actions and the talking points to kind of fit the content that we expect from a shooter creator? So I love to take a brief and then together with the clients, see what we can do to really cater to specific verticals. So we'll have a general brief and then make sure that we have a couple slides with recommendations, kind of tips and tricks, how we would like suggest, say, integrate it. And then we've really noticed that that's really made like a difference when receiving drafts through. It's really interesting to see how it still feels unique. Every creator has their own like way of talking and engaging with their community, but at least we can make sure that it doesn't feel like a general ad, which I think often happens. And we want to make sure that when an audience sees these, like they get a nice experience from it.
And do you also find that that approach reduces the need for refilming, editing, reviewing the drafts over and over again as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that, I really recommend working with scripts. I know a lot of creators prefer to just jump in and start recording, but especially when we're talking about like an in-depth approval process, which you can expect from IP-owned games, it's really useful to make sure that we don't extend a long process even further. And so
Mhm.
yeah, it doesn't take that long anymore to write a script. I think take a couple of minutes, write it down, send it over for approval, and that way we really reduce those edits requested.
Yeah, and I suppose that's along with other things, that potential for lots and lots of rounds of editing and drafts and reviewing is one of the big blockers that a lot of brands see when they're thinking about working with influencers who, notoriously can be difficult to control the content with IPs. So, to kind of summarize, what do you think are kind of the main challenges that brands or IP based products face when approaching influencer marketing?
I think one of the main problems would be that a lot of them already see the limitations with certain lore, certain worlds, or certain things that we know are off topic, like that we're not allowed to touch. I think one of those things is having a good brief and having those outlined. And if you're running multiple campaigns, don't be afraid of like adapting the brief with learnings from each campaign. That's really going to cut down that process. Other than that, trust that we vet every single creator we put forward to you. We make sure that there's, nothing problematic going on. We check for controversies and we check for a genuine connection. I often write little notes in like with every creator that I send through on why I think they'd be a good fit. So yeah, I would say lean on the expertise that we bring as an agency and then provide us with as much briefing, context, do's and don'ts that you'd like to see in the content. And then that way we can build a beautiful campaign together.
Exactly. And I think that's the perfect summary of how clients, if they want to approach an influencer marketing campaign, how they can set themselves up for success at the very start of that agency relationship as well. Coming prepared with, like you said, realistic timelines, understanding their internal approval process and how things are going to have to be passed across from group to group, doing things in bulk at the same time, having that round of drafts to approve all at once to save people's time and moving parts again, understanding their needs, the brand safety requirements, every kind of detail that we can put into the planning stage to make sure that actually the execution doesn't really differ from other campaigns that greatly. It just takes those few little bits of planning to put everything in place so that we can keep to those timelines and, like you say, deliver a beautiful campaign. So, I mean, that's a great overview, I think, in general of how we approach IPs, the process, the potential, challenges, but actually how all of them are easy to overcome and achievable when you've got the right planning in place. So I think thanks for joining me today, Anais, and chatting me through the work that you've done as well and how you've experienced things. As a final kind of closing point, what's like one lesson or rule of thumb that you've developed or learnt when you've been working on these IP campaigns?
Yeah, I think the main bit would be, like you say, planning. Ideally, the planning phase should take longer than the execution phase. I tend to say over communicate. I know a lot of brands are scared of that, but as an agency, we are an extension of you. We are there, we are on your side. Let us know if stuff's happening so we can prepare for that. And then trust creators and trust us to find the best audience for you.
Amazing and well said. And for anyone listening, if you're working with a big franchise or an IP and you're wondering how influencer marketing can be a part of your marketing mix, then this is the kind of challenge that we love to support you with and to help solve. So feel free to get in touch with our team via the website. You can find me, you can find Anais and any of the Media Bodies team on LinkedIn as well. So subscribe and please follow along to see, more episodes of Beyond the Feed when we explore different areas of influencer marketing. And you can check out our website anytime for more resources and insights on the ways that we approach campaigns and the past work that we've done as well.